Earlier this month, details of how a Hollywood hotshot Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulted many women, many of them established actors, created a ripple effect across the world. It led to a hashtag called #MeToo, which resonated with women on social media in India too. But it left all of us to wonder, can this be happening in our film industry? Can it be happening in Bollywood? Remember, the Weinstein story illustrated and made crystal clear how women feel pressurized, scared, and are forced to perform sexual favors because they feel it would rob them of their right to work if they refuse. Just last week, Priyanka Chopras answered the question when in an interview to Marie Claire magazine, she said, "I don't think there's a Weinstein. I don't even think there's one Weinstein in Hollywood. There are a lot more men, and not just in India, but everywhere else, just men trying to take away power from women. It is not about sex, it's about power, about putting a woman in her place." Unlike the graphic details that are tumbling out from the US, we are not hearing specifics in India, but it is becoming more and more tangible, especially in a piece that actor Richa Chadha has written on Monday. And we're glad to have her here speaking to NDTV. Richa Chadha, in your blog, you say about the Harvey Weinsteins in Bollywood, sadly, there's something all girls would know about. That's what you say. Would you like to tell us a bit more about what you meant?
I was actually trying to make a comment on how nowadays actors are expected to know everything about the economy and taxation and everything about current affairs, and this was something that I think many people are familiar with, sexual harassment at the workplace. And I was specifically in my blog as well, it's kind of easy to take Bollywood as a case study for all that is wrong with society, maybe because it helps with the TRPs, and maybe because we just like doing that, because it's an industry with a lot of glitz and glamour. But it's a very prevalent problem. It happens in all spheres, in all industries, and I think we should be able to speak about it.
Are you saying it's not as bad as it's made out to be?
I'm actually making a general comment. That's why I wrote a blog about it, because it's very easy to look at a industry and say this is what's wrong with it. What that serves to do is, a few parents will be very wary. They'll say, "Hamari ghar ki ladkiyan will not act in Bollywood films," or men from our family will not be working with in Bollywood films. It would serve to make people think that we are in some way complicit, or this is what we've had to go through in order to get ahead in our lives. What I really wanted to do was to examine the culture where it's not just anecdotal, where it's not just somebody sharing their experience and hence becoming a headline, but really evaluating how all of us in one way or another have had to deal with it. It's not a problem, like Bombay getting flooded in the rains is a problem because it happens once a year or twice a year. This is very problem. It's a huge thing. It's omnipresent. It's very insidious, and this is what I wanted to speak about, because even the press, the culture that is created is often, it uses people for headlines and TRPs, and then do you, as somebody who's a part of the press, will you take responsibility of suppose tomorrow a woman gets up and says this happened to me, and she stops getting work after that? Who is willing to take responsibility? Who is willing to look after her interests, provide her with a lawyer, or feed her family? It's not going to happen. So it's very easy to say that there's nobody who's going to take names, but we are all complicit in this silence, if you would like to call it that. And people are doing all they can to deal with it in ways that they know best.
That's a very valid point you raised there, but how do you think it will work? Do you think they'll be punished if you speak up?
Yes, because people have complaints about how these women have spoken up after 2 decades or 3 decades. You have to see that they are today in a position of power, and that's why they are able to speak. But how did they get that position of power? By ignoring and dealing with many Weinsteins on the way. So you can't judge somebody who's been a victim of this about how long they took to report, or whether they chose to report it at all or not, because the culture doesn't permit it. That's what I wrote in my blog, that in Hindi it's called Izzat Lootna, as if in Hindi it's called Izzat Lootna, as if there's no dignity left after the act. So the whole culture is so unfair that we are always blaming the victim. Why didn't she speak up? How do you get to a position of power where you have a voice? Today I am able to blog about it and so many people read it because I am an actor, I am a public figure, people watch my film, some people care about what I have to say. So it's from that vantage point that I will use my voice and say something. But to get there, one has to deal with this, and this is not how we deserve to be living our lives.
Isn't it very sad then, Richa, that in India, people are likely to get sexually harassed in order to get ahead in their career? And what happens if somebody stays that way and never gets to a position of power? Will they have a lifetime of just sexual harassment and never that opportunity to speak up?
No, I think at some point people do realize that it's not working. Also, predatory behavior is something that people would warn each other about, as is the case we saw in Hollywood, where actresses actually warned each other. It's not about how long an actress had to endure. It's also about how Woody Allen warns of a witch hunt, and also why people chose to go to him for a comment baffles me, considering his own personal history. And let's ask Quentin Tarantino that if he knew, if this was like the hushed corridor whispers, then why didn't he confront somebody? Why didn't the people who knew did something? Why expect more from someone who's already dealing with the mental trauma or physical abuse or whatever, of having been through an episode with a predator or a sick, perverse man? There were others who knew and they did nothing. So this is what we need to evaluate. And I'm not pointing fingers at the media, but it's very easy to reduce this whole argument to just Bollywood. Also, people are more interested, the only thing it serves to do is to say, oh, look at this fallen industry, they have no morals anyway, these people will do anything for publicity, for work, to get ahead. It doesn't serve to create a change. And also, people should be able to come forward and share their experiences with dignity, without feeling guilty for it, because one of the first things somebody who's been a victim deals with is guilt. They blame themselves and then society blames them. What were you wearing? Why were you out so late? So the first thing to do is to create an atmosphere where people are brave, courageous and open, and they are able to share what they have been through without being judged for it, without being humiliated or looked down upon for it. And that is something which the media can very, very easily do. I plead to the media to do that.
Now I wanted to ask you, if there's one thing that can be done for that can be done which can make Bollywood a better workplace, what would that one thing be?
I think that the thing with most people who are built like Harvey Weinstein or whatever is they are serial predators, serial rapists, serial assaulters. And I do not believe that they would stop unless they've been discovered, because what they're dealing with is some kind of sickness or affliction where they derive pleasure from somebody who's in a weaker position, somebody who they can threaten, intimidate or even physically hurt. So I don't believe that these people will be stopped unless they are caught. And the way to create, I don't care if it's fear or if it works, when people have the fear of being exposed or caught, if that stops them, that prevents a whole number of victims. So, if you're a girl and if you're dealing with it, please save these, even a lewd text message or somebody just being overall disgusting with you, save it, it's evidence, and use it against that person. Shame them, and I said, shame the oppressor. That's what needs to happen. I think that's the only way that if people are afraid that their money, their legacy will be threatened, they will feel more responsible, whether they like it or not. And that's a good way to catch them. I'm not hoping for some magical overnight change of heart. They've obviously done this enough to know that they inflict pain, like Harvey Weinstein. So, I mean, what you can attack is their legacy.
The fact that you are an outsider, you made it by yourself in the industry, for people who have their parents from the Bollywood industry, is it a little easier?
I don't know. Maybe I just give off a tougher vibe, and I've not really taken anything lying down in my life. So I've been safe, but not everybody can be as strong or also somebody willing to lose work for this reason. And you know, everybody has their own compulsion, sabki majboori hoti hai, as they say. So I don't want to judge anybody. But I mean, I guess I would believe that it's probably easier if you're an insider. However, I wouldn't know, because I've never been on the inside. I've sort of always existed on the fringes. Even if they've not had to directly deal with it or been propositioned, it's very rampant, and I compared it to the air we breathe, because you don't even know when you're ingesting it. You don't even get to know. And this goes for most men also. Most men who think they're feminists, who care about the women in their life or in their office. I think it's time to understand privilege. And being a man in the world is a privilege, and that shouldn't be that way, because there have always been men and women in the world. Being a man shouldn't be a privilege. Being a woman shouldn't be a disadvantage.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Richa Chadha. I know this is not an easy topic to talk about, but perhaps what you're saying will make others' experiences much more easier to cope with. Thanks for speaking to NDTV.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
So Richa Chadha speaking up. It's the second actor from Bollywood to talk about the harassment that is there, to talk about the Harvey Weinsteins of Bollywood. Now, to just give us another perspective, the male perspective, perhaps, we have Manish Bhardwaj, who has made the film More Money Maya. Thank you for speaking to us. You heard what she said. Now, what I find really, really sad and telling about this, and I think Richa Chadha made a decision that she said that I'm not going to go into graphic details, because I think that it just gratifies people and anecdotally doesn't do anything. But the fact is that she talks about how what we've always suspected, that there is a casting couch, that at every level there is harassment, every level. So obviously what was happening with Harvey Weinstein is happening maybe rampantly, even at a greater extent. So does that surprise you at all? To us, it is the first time what we've heard about someone telling it like that. Even without the names, it is quite powerful.
Yes, I'm not surprised at all. I think it's a time bomb ticking, and one day it will go off. Some big name will come, and personally, I don't think I will be surprised at all. No matter how big the name is, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And you know, she's very articulate, and I'm like really impressed by what she said. I want to say that I do not know what women go through, because I'm not a, you know.
But you were telling me this actor you worked with, woman actor that you worked with, she said something which is very telling to you.
Yeah, that was the day we were rapping with her, and she almost had tears in her eyes, because she gave me a hug, and she said, you know, it's amazing to work in a unit where you're actually treated as an actress and nothing else. You're actually treated as talent, and you know, so that was, again, that wasn't surprising to me, because you know, you've heard stories, you know that this is going on, and like I said, it's not surprising at all. And Richa is right, because this must be happening across industries, across segments, across, you know, everywhere else. You know, people in the position of power who can dictate, you know, how your careers can go. Must be terrible to work with them.
Okay, so Mayank Shekhar, film critic, is also here with us. Mayank, you obviously have a ringside view to a lot of things that happen. Do you are you surprised at all? Because what Richa Chadha told us is that you have to go through many Weinsteins, and she said, don't judge all of us for not taking names, but it's only when you get to a position of power that you can speak out. But are you surprised that Priyanka Chopra is in a position of power, and yet she's not naming anything, she's kept it generic, acknowledging that there is harassment of this level in Bollywood as well, and yet neither of them have taken names.
True. Well, I think one needs to also place this in a larger perspective. I think harassment of any nature would exist in environments where there's, and I just don't mean sexual harassment in this particular case, but largely it could even be slavery for all we care, will exist in environments where there's huge imbalance of power. And that happens to be show business purely because, one, there is no examination here that you need to pass and get a job. Once you become well known, yes, there can be some element of public acceptance, and therefore you will get more job. But to get there, you still need almost someone's favor to test your skills to be actually seen in the public eye. So it starts from there. It starts from the lowliest of ranks, as it were. But I think the second part here, which kind of sets apart show business from various other organized sectors, is that while we call it an industry, but it's really like companies formed for 1 year or 2 years for the making of one particular film. It's a production unit of cast and crew that comes together, a film is shot, and then the same cast and crew moves in various separate directions to form other companies. So in such a situation, I think the redressal becomes a huge issue as well. Which HR department are you going to have in a situation like this?
Well,
which sexual harassment committee are you going to form? And also when people are working in very intimate environments, what happens, who says what, and then there is one person who lords over everything, who's taking all the major calls so far as the production of a film is concerned. So it's a tricky area to be in, but I have to say in that context, and having followed Bollywood over a decade and a half and is quite simply, it's a lot better than it's ever been. For a variety of reasons. One, of course, is that it's a little more corporatized.
I'm really glad you say that, because it's a perfect cue for a little clip I want to play you from that interview where she talks about what senior actresses have told younger ones. Just hear what she says about that.
I have been told by even like senior actresses that you girls are not going through half the things that we had to face when we were working in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. So that's worth examining, and it's really tragic that artists have to deal with this.
What did you make of that? Isn't it sad that, and she talks about then how the Rekha episode, which has been documented, that is one that we know of, how, she wasn't told that there was going to be a kissing scene or whatever, and the same kind of Marlon Brando rape scene, which violated and shocked people across the world just a couple of years ago. Instances of that over there. Does this surprise? Isn't it really, really sad that they're saying things are better, but is it really that?
I'm not sure. I think things might be a little better in the in the A grade sector of Bollywood films or Indian films. But there are don't forget that there are a lot of films being made in the which are not the really A grade, and I don't think things have changed there at all. I mean,
can you give us an anecdote?
I don't have an anecdote, but you can see that what you see on screen. I mean, it's difficult to watch those kind of films. I mean, I'm not saying I watch those films, but sometimes when you see clips and things like that, and you just look at what the actress in that scene or that film is going through, it's appalling. I can believe that things are better in the high A grade thing, but is it better across the industry?
Yeah.
And we're talking of the whole of India. I mean, it's not just Hindi films. We make films in some 30 languages.
So Mayank, you were talking about how this whole sexual harassment panel, it's not there. But part of the whole industrialization and the corporatization of Bollywood, this hasn't been an aspect of it?
Well, so far as the studio system is concerned, of course, there is some element of control. And we have come across quite a few examples, if you've noticed, in the recent past, where there have been complaints against filmmakers. I mean, Phantom was a case in point, and because Phantom as a company with 4 filmmakers and Vikas Behel, there was a sexual harassment case against him. It went directly to Reliance, which controls a portion of Phantom, and so there was a sexual harassment committee formed there, which is something that would have been unheard of in the 80s. So yes, I mean, we are moving in that direction. I think at least, as you rightly mentioned, the A-grade films are at least moving in that direction. But not just that, I think if you just see the number of women in the workforce, of course it's still far lower than it should be, but it's still higher than it's ever been. So whether the crew or people, if you just a woman in a room of 100.
Right, that's one of the things that Richa mentioned as a factor of how things are getting better in Bollywood. We'll take a short break and continue talking about this factor. Stay with us. Welcome back on Agenda. We are talking about the interview that the second actor in Bollywood, Richa Chadha, after Priyanka Chopras said that there are many Weinsteins, not just in Hollywood, but in India as well, and many of them. We've seen Richa Chadha speak about it and say how one has to go through many Weinsteins till they get to a position of power. Manish Bhardwaj, a film director, is here with us. You want to tell us about the audition process? That's where the actual casting couch is believed to be.
Yeah, it's, so I've been a part, although I made only one film, but I've auditioned many actors because I worked on other films as in various capacities. And the one thing that I notice is that, and when an actor walks in, these are not your established actors, these are, the new faces you want to work with, the new talent that you want to work with. And the first thing I always notice is how important it is to give them their dignity back. When you meet them, you've realized without even them mentioning a word, and these are your male actors, your female actors, all kinds of actors, and you've realized what kind of experiences that they've gone through, that they've come here thinking that they will be, taken advantage of or whatever it is. So it's, my first job when I meet an actor, doesn't matter whether that person is going to work with me or not, my first job always is to give that person the dignity back, telling them how important they are to us. Without them, we cannot function as filmmakers, as storytellers. Sure. We cannot function without them. They are as important to us as anybody who works in that unit. Yeah. And that always surprises me.
Before we end, we're totally out of time, but Mayank Shekhar, I wanted to ask you that one of the things that I asked, because, I asked Richa Chadha was, that is it true that is that why you have so many families in there, because having a famous father or mother, does that give you protection from such kind of harassment? Well, she said that she wouldn't know about that, but don't you think that's perhaps logical?
Well, what has happened, and if you just look back at the past almost 100 years of Hindi films, you will notice that while the stars were perfectly fine with making their sons stars, or producers were perfectly fine with making their sons movie stars, investing in them, launching them, they never sent their daughters to the movies. Clearly they knew something which they were privy to, which they felt would be unsafe for their daughters or the female child to be part of the films. But that changed towards the early 2000s, if you notice, and you see all of them, whether that's an Anil Kapoor's daughter or a Shatrughan Sinha's daughter, and so many of them are actually now in the movies. And the Kapoor family never sent their daughters to movies either.
Well, it's
they were very clear on that. You get married, you never step into this place. Clearly they knew something.
Mayank, we're totally out of time. We could go on talking about this, but perhaps it's really, really important, and we should end with Richa Chadha's words, where she says that one shouldn't judge women for not speaking out. They obviously have reason in Bollywood not to do so, and it is about women in the workplace. That's it on Agenda. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.